I'm Cassidy Thornton, 28 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my father stood up at our family reunion, grabbed the microphone, and said something about me in front of 68 relatives that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. We only have one daughter we're proud of. That's what he said, and he was looking straight at my older sister Brianna when he said it. For 22 years, my family called me the burden. The premature baby who cost too much, the quiet sister nobody defended, the daughter who sat at the end of every table while Brianna got the tuition, the praise, the love. But what none of them knew, not my parents, not my cousins, not a single person in that crowd, was that 6 weeks ago on a Thursday night at my kitchen table, Brianna got drunk and confessed everything. The money she'd stolen from our parents, the nursing degree she'd faked, the lies she'd been feeding the family about me since I was 14, and I recorded all of it, 14 minutes that would shatter 22 years of silence. Before I tell you what happened when I pressed play, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you feel this story deserves it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now where you are? Now let me take you back 22 years, to a January night in Georgia, when I arrived in this world 6 weeks too early, and became the debt my family never wanted to pay. I came into this world 6 weeks early, on a Tuesday night in January, in a hospital 40 minutes from our house, because the closer one didn't have a NICU. My lungs weren't ready, my heart wasn't ready, nothing about me was ready. 3 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit, $87,000 in medical bills. My parents had just closed on their first house 2 months before. My dad, Glenn, was driving trucks for a regional freight company. My mom, Jolene, had quit her receptionist job to stay home with my sister Brianna, who was 3. I know the exact dollar amount because my mother made sure I'd never forget it. She told the story at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering where there was an audience. Cassidy almost bankrupted us before she could even open her eyes, she'd say. Then she'd laugh, and the relatives would laugh, and I'd sit there holding my fork so tight my knuckles went white. When I finally came home from the hospital, small and fragile and wrapped in a yellow blanket, my sister Brianna looked at me in my crib and asked our mother a question that became the Thornton family's favorite joke for the next 2 decades. Can we send her back? Everyone laughed. My dad, my aunts, my uncles, even my grandmother Edith, though I'd learn later that she stopped laughing long before anyone else did. That question, can we send her back, followed me through every birthday, every report card, every holiday dinner. Brianna would say it when I spilled juice. My dad would say it when I got carsick on road trips. My mom would whisper it to her sister Ruth on the phone when she thought I couldn't hear. But I always heard. Growing up, I learned the rules of our family early. Rule 1, Brianna comes first. Rule 2, if something goes wrong, it's probably Cassidy's fault. Rule 3, don't complain about rules 1 and 2. When I was 10, I won first place in the county writing contest. My English teacher, Mrs. Hadley, called the house to congratulate my parents. My mom forgot to come to the award ceremony. That same week, Brianna placed 3rd in a school track meet, and we all went out to Olive Garden to celebrate. I remember sitting in that booth, holding my certificate under the table, wondering if anyone would ask about it. Nobody did. But it was the Thanksgiving I was 14 that cracked something inside me. Brianna told my mother, with tears in her eyes, because Brianna always knew exactly when to cry, that I'd stolen our grandmother Edith's gold pendant necklace, the one Grandma wore in her wedding photo, the one she'd promised to pass down. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even been in Grandma's bedroom that weekend. It didn't matter. My mother believed Brianna instantly. I was dragged in front of 12 relatives in the living room and told to kneel and apologize to my grandmother for being a thief. I knelt. I cried. I said I was sorry for something I didn't do. 2 weeks later, the necklace turned up in Brianna's dresser drawer. My mother's explanation? It must have gotten mixed in with the laundry. Nobody apologized to me. Not my mother, not Brianna, not anyone. That night, I found my mother's old journal in the hallway closet. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I was looking for proof that she'd loved me once. Instead, I found this line, dated the year I was born. Sometimes I wish we'd stopped at 1. I read it 7 times. I kept hoping the words would rearrange themselves. They didn't. I left home the summer I turned 18. I'd earned a partial scholarship to a state college 2 hours away. Nothing Ivy League, but I was proud of it. I needed my parents to cover the remaining $4,000 a semester. I brought the financial aid letter to dinner like I was presenting a case before a jury. My father barely glanced at it. My mother didn't look up from her plate. "We already spent enough on you," she said, "between the hospital bills and your braces and that inhaler you needed every winter. Cassidy, we just don't have it." That same month, my parents wrote a check for Brianna's full tuition at a private nursing program. $28,000. No partial scholarship. No questions asked. So I worked. 2 jobs, barista at 6 in the morning, data entry at a temp agency until 10 at night. I took 5 years to finish what should have taken 4, but I graduated with a degree in accounting and 0 debt. Nobody came to my ceremony. I wore my cap alone in a crowd of strangers and their cheering families. And still, I kept showing up. Every Christmas, I drove 2 hours with gifts I'd wrapped myself. Every Thanksgiving, I brought dessert nobody asked for. I sat at the end of the table. I slept on the couch while Brianna got the guest room with the quilt my grandmother made. I called my mother every Sunday evening. She picked up maybe once out of every 3 calls. I told myself it was enough, that if I just kept trying, something would shift, that the love was there, just buried under years of habit and financial stress and old resentment. I wasn't trying to earn their love. I thought I already had it, just trapped under something I hadn't figured out how to move yet. Until 3 months ago, when I discovered what my sister had really been doing behind everyone's back. It started with a coffee shop. I was grabbing a latte before work on a Tuesday when I saw a woman waving at me from a corner table. It took me a second. Then I recognized her. Megan Holt. She and Brianna had been in the same nursing program. "Cassidy, right? Brianna's sister?" She pulled out the chair across from her. "How's Bree doing? I haven't seen her since, first semester." I almost corrected her. Brianna had been telling the family she was a registered nurse for 8 years. She talked about patients she'd saved, overnight shifts that drained her, the calling she'd found. "First semester?" I repeated. Megan's face shifted. "Yeah, she stopped showing up after October. I figured she transferred, but..." She tilted her head. "Wait, your family doesn't know she dropped out?" I set my coffee down very carefully. "I just assumed everyone knew," Megan said quietly. I drove to work with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and started searching. The nursing program Brianna had attended, it had a public registry of graduates. I scrolled through every name from her year. Brianna Thornton wasn't on the list. I dug deeper. My parents had paid $28,000 for that program. When a student drops out in the first semester, the school refunds a portion of tuition, a significant portion. Brianna had never returned that money. She'd pocketed the refund and told everyone she'd graduated. For 8 years, she'd been telling our parents, our grandmother, our entire extended family, that she was a nurse. Showing up to holidays in scrubs she bought online, telling stories that sounded real because she'd memorized them from medical dramas. And nobody, not a single person, had ever thought to verify it. The second discovery came because of my mother's own mouth. About 2 months before the reunion, I was on one of those rare Sunday calls where Jolene actually picked up. She sounded tired, distracted. Midway through our conversation, if you could call it that, she muttered something I wasn't supposed to catch. "Your father's retirement fund looks thin. I don't understand it. The market's been fine." I'm an accountant. I notice numbers the way most people notice weather. Something in her tone pinched my attention, and I asked, casually, carefully, if she'd looked at the statements recently. "Brianna handles all that," Mom said. "She set up the online access for us. She's so good with that stuff. Being in healthcare, she understands finances." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I called my dad's old landline and talked him through pulling up his retirement account online. He didn't know I was checking. I told him I just wanted to make sure his beneficiary info was up to date. The numbers told a story my family never would. Over 4 years, $40,000 had been transferred out of my parents' retirement account in small, irregular amounts. $2,000 here, $3,500 there, into an external checking account. The routing number matched a bank in Brianna's city. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then I called my mother. I told her, as gently as I could, that something was wrong with the retirement fund, that the money hadn't gone to market losses, that it had gone somewhere specific. She cut me off before I finished. Don't be jealous of your sister, Cassidy. Brianna manages that account because she's responsible, unlike some people. She hung up, and that's when I understood. Telling them privately would never work. Let me be clear about what was at stake. My grandmother, Edith Calloway, was 79 years old. She'd built a life on a beautiful property outside Atlanta, a house she and my grandfather designed together before he passed, a garden she'd kept blooming for 40 years, and enough savings to leave something meaningful behind. She was updating her will. She'd told the family as much, and in the 2 months before the reunion, Brianna had visited Grandma 4 times. 4 times. My sister, who normally managed 1 visit a year at most, was suddenly the most devoted granddaughter in Georgia. She brought flowers. She brought homemade soup, which I later learned she'd bought from a deli and transferred into her own containers. She sat at Grandma's kitchen table and held her hand and talked about her nursing career. My mother told the family, "Brianna is taking such good care of Mom. She's so selfless." I knew what was happening. Brianna was positioning herself. She wanted to be the name on the will, the sole inheritor, the golden child's final trophy. If I stayed silent, 3 things would happen. My parents would lose more money they couldn't afford to lose. My grandmother would be deceived into rewriting her legacy based on lies. And I would lose the last person in my family who had ever truly seen me. I wasn't planning revenge. That word feels too sharp, too clean for what this was. I was trying to protect my grandmother from the same person who'd stolen from my parents, lied about her education, framed me for theft when I was 14, and spent 22 years making sure I never had a seat at the family table. But I needed proof, not suspicion, not accounting spreadsheets, proof that couldn't be explained away, reframed, or buried under my mother's denial. I needed Brianna's own words. 3 weeks before the reunion, I texted my sister. "Hey, Bri. I know things have been weird between us. Can we talk before the reunion? I don't want it to be awkward in front of Grandma." She replied in 4 minutes. "Sure? Your place?" That should have told me everything. Brianna never came to my apartment. She thought my neighborhood was beneath her. But the reunion was 3 weeks away, and she needed me quiet and cooperative in front of Grandma Edith. A quick visit to pacify the difficult sister, worth the drive. She showed up on a Thursday evening in a silk blouse and designer jeans, carrying a bottle of Pinot Grigio. She hugged me at the door, tight, performative, and immediately started scanning my apartment with that pitying look she'd perfected. "It's cozy," she said. The word dripped. I opened the wine. I poured her glass fuller than mine. I set my phone on the bookshelf behind us, screen down, recording app running. Georgia is a one-party consent state. I was that party. We sat at my kitchen table and I started small. "So how's work? The hospital keeping you busy?" Brianna launched into a story about a patient who'd coded during her shift last Tuesday. She told it with hand gestures, pauses, vocal inflections, the whole performance. She'd always been good at this, making fiction feel like memory. I let her finish. Then I said, as casually as I could, "That's crazy. Hey, I actually ran into Megan Holt last month, your old classmate. She said something kind of weird." Brianna's wineglass paused halfway to her lips. "Megan talks too much," she said. Her voice dropped half an octave. And I knew. The mask had a crack. I didn't push immediately. I poured more wine. I let the silence work. Brianna finished her second glass, then her third. The Pinot Grigio was doing what I couldn't, loosening the bolts she kept so carefully tightened in public. "Bri," I said quietly, "I'm not judging you. I just want to understand. We're sisters." She stared at me for a long time. Then something shifted behind her eyes. Not guilt, not fear, but something worse. Contempt. The kind that comes from believing you're untouchable. "You want to understand?" She leaned back. "Fine." And then Brianna Thornton, golden child, beloved daughter, family nurse, started talking. I didn't finish nursing school. Big deal. It wasn't for me. She waved her hand like she was brushing away a gnat. Mom and Dad's tuition money? They owed me that for all the years I had to be the perfect one while you were draining them dry. My chest tightened. I said nothing. You know what I told Mom when you were 14? That you stole Grandma's necklace? She smiled. Actually smiled. I took it. I needed it gone for Thanksgiving so you'd look bad. And it worked. Every single time. She poured herself another glass. Her hand was steady. Her conscience was clear. All I ever had to do was cry. And Mom took my side. Every time. You were always so easy to push out of the way, Cass. You never fought back. You just took it. Under the table, my hands were trembling, my jaw ached from clenching, but I kept my face still, I kept my breathing even, because the phone on the bookshelf was catching every syllable. And Brianna wasn't done. The wine had peeled away the last layer. Dad's retirement account? Brianna tilted her glass, watching the light refract through the wine like she was admiring a jewel. I've taken about 40 grand over the last 4 years. Small amounts. They'll never figure it out. They think the market crashed. She laughed. A short, bright, careless sound. And Grandma? I asked. My voice was steady. Barely. Brianna leaned forward, elbows on the table. Why do you think I've been visiting her, Cass? She's rewriting her will. I'll make sure my name is the only one that matters. She held my gaze, and then she said the thing that sealed everything. And you? You'll get nothing, just like always. She set her glass down gently. Because in this family, I'm the daughter. You're the bill. You're the bill, not the burden. The bill, like I was a debt they'd never wanted to pay. Brianna yawned 15 minutes later and fell asleep on my couch with her shoes still on. I pulled a blanket over her because even then, even after all of that, she was still my sister, and I didn't know what else to do with that. Then I went to the kitchen. I sat in the dark. I picked up my phone and stopped the recording. 14 minutes and 22 seconds. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But something had shifted in me, something tectonic and irreversible, and crying felt like going backward. I played the recording once from the beginning, just to make sure it was clear. Brianna's voice came through the speaker, sharp and certain. You were always so easy to push out of the way. 14 minutes. That's all it took for 22 years of lies to collapse into a file on my phone. The question was no longer if, it was when and where. Now I'm going to pause here for just a second because I need to ask you something. If you were me, sitting alone in that dark kitchen with 14 minutes of truth on your phone, would you play it privately for your parents? Or would you wait for the one moment when the truth couldn't be swept under the rug? Drop a 1 in the comments for tell the parents, or a 2 for wait for the reunion. And if you're invested in this story, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next is the part I still can't believe happened. Now, back to the story. 2 weeks before the reunion, I made a phone call that changed everything. My Aunt Ruth picked up on the second ring. Ruth Calloway is my mother's younger sister, quieter, sharper, and the only person in the family who ever looked at me like I was a whole person and not a footnote. When I was 8 and had pneumonia, Ruth drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to sit by my bed. When I graduated college alone, she was the one who sent flowers. The card read, I see you, Cassidy, always have. Hey, sweetheart, she said. What's going on? I didn't tell her about the recording, not yet. I just asked, carefully. Aunt Ruth, have you ever thought something was off about Brianna? The line went quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Ruth exhaled slowly. I've been watching your sister for years, Cass. Something doesn't add up. The career stories, the money, the way she handles your parents. But I could never prove anything. She told me she'd tried, once. 3 years ago, she mentioned to Jolene that Brianna's stories about work seemed inconsistent. Jolene's response was immediate and nuclear. She stopped talking to Ruth for 6 months, cut her out of family group texts, told the cousins Ruth was going through something. Your mother will destroy anyone who threatens Brianna's image, Ruth said, including her own sister. I closed my eyes. Aunt Ruth, are you handling the slideshow at the reunion? The projector setup? I'm doing the tech for the family photo montage, yeah, why? If I needed to connect a phone to that projector, would that be possible? Silence again. Then, it's just an HDMI adapter. Cassidy, what are you planning? I might have something the family needs to hear. She paused. I could hear her breathing. I don't know what you have, she said finally. But I trust you. I'll make sure the equipment works. 10 days before the reunion, a handwritten envelope arrived at my apartment. The stationery was cream-colored, the handwriting shaky but deliberate. My grandmother Edith's. She still wrote letters by hand. She said email was for people in a hurry, and she'd earned the right to take her time. My dear Cassidy, the letter read, the reunion is July 19th. I want both my granddaughters there. I want to see your face. Please come. Love, Grandma. I held that letter against my chest like it was something fragile. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. You got the invitation, Jolene said, not a question. I did. Good. Now listen. Her voice shifted into the tone I knew by heart, the managerial tone, the one that made instructions sound like favors. You're invited, but behave yourself. Brianna is giving a speech about her nursing career, and your father is saying a few words. Just sit and smile and be grateful you're included. I gripped the phone tighter. I'll be there, Mom. And wear something decent, Cassidy. Last time you looked like you didn't even try. I said nothing. Oh, and Mom is making some big announcements at the reunion, Jolene added, almost casually. Family decisions, important ones. So just don't make it about you. She hung up before I could respond. She always did. I sat on the edge of my bed and read Grandma Edith's letter one more time. Then I opened my closet and looked at the white dress I'd been saving for something I couldn't name. Something that mattered. This was Brianna's stage. My parents had cast the roles. She was the star. I was the background extra who should be grateful for a seat. But I was done with their script. I was bringing my phone and my own story. The night before the reunion, I sat on my living room floor with my phone and a pair of earbuds and listened to the recording one more time. Brianna's voice filled my ears, close and clear and cruel. You were always so easy to push out of the way. I heard myself asking about Grandma, my voice thin and careful. And then Brianna. You'll get nothing. Just like always. My hands were shaking when I pulled the earbuds out. I almost deleted it. I want you to know that. My thumb hovered over the trash icon for 10 full seconds, and every year of conditioning screamed at me to keep the peace, to swallow it, to be the good daughter who never makes trouble. But then I thought about my grandmother's letter. I want to see your face. I thought about my dad's retirement account, bleeding quietly for 4 years. I thought about my 14-year-old self, kneeling on a living room floor, apologizing for a theft she didn't commit. I put the phone in my bag. That evening, I called Aunt Ruth one last time. Is the projector ready? HDMI adapter, external speakers, everything set for the slideshow, she said. Cassidy, whatever you're doing, are you sure? I'm sure. A long pause. Then I'll make sure it works. You just have to plug in. After we hung up, I wrote a letter to my grandmother. Short, honest. I sealed it in an envelope and slipped it into my bag next to the phone. It said, Grandma, I'm sorry if what happens tomorrow hurts you, but you've always taught me that the truth matters more than comfort. I hope you still believe that. I didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what morning would bring. I was ready. The Callaway estate sat on 3 acres of rolling Georgia green, 20 miles outside Atlanta, wrapped in old magnolia trees and a white fence that my grandfather had painted every spring until the year he died. Grandma Edith hosted the family reunion there every 5 years. This one was the biggest. 68 people across 4 generations of Callaways and Thorntons. Long banquet tables draped in white cloth stretched across the back lawn. String lights hung between the magnolias, waiting for dusk. A projector screen stood near the main table, already set up for the family photo slideshow, Aunt Ruth's work. I arrived early. White dress, hair down, phone in my clutch, heart in my throat. Aunt Ruth was adjusting the speaker cables near the projector. When she saw me, she nodded once. Calm, steady. She tilted her head toward the HDMI adapter resting on the edge of the tech table. I understood. The guests filtered in over the next hour. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Great-aunts who pinched my cheeks. Uncle Frank with his booming laugh. Kids chasing each other around the garden chairs. Then Brianna arrived. Red dress, expensive heels, full makeup. She floated through the crowd like a celebrity at a premiere, kissing cheeks, squeezing hands, performing warmth so convincingly I almost believed it myself. She went straight to Grandma Edith and wrapped her in a hug that lasted just long enough for 3 people to photograph it. My parents flanked Brianna like bodyguards. Glenn in his pressed khakis, Jolene in a floral dress, hand on Brianna's shoulder, beaming, the perfect trio. I stood near the back, by the hydrangea bushes, holding a glass of sweet tea I didn't drink. And Grandma Edith, mid-hug with Brianna, looked over her granddaughter's shoulder, found me in the crowd, and gave me a small, sad smile that broke something in my chest. Dinner was served at 6. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, peach cobbler. The Callaway reunion spread hadn't changed in decades. People filled their plates, found their seats, and settled into the kind of warm, loud chaos that big Southern families specialize in. I sat at the far end of the second table. Nobody had assigned seats, but somehow the family geography always pushed me to the perimeter. After dinner, my mother stood up and tapped a fork against her glass. The conversations quieted. Before we do the slideshow, Jolene announced, Brianna has something she'd like to share. Some of you know she's been doing incredible work as a nurse. Bree, honey, come on up. Applause. Warm, encouraging, trusting applause from 68 people who had no reason to doubt. Brianna walked to the front with the ease of someone who'd rehearsed this in the mirror. She took the wireless mic from Ruth's tech table and smiled. The practiced, symmetrical smile that had gotten her out of every corner she'd ever been backed into. Thank you, Mom. She pressed a hand to her chest. Nursing has been the most rewarding experience of my life. Last month, I helped a patient recover from a stroke. She held my hand and told me I saved her life. People murmured with admiration. Grandma Edith nodded proudly. 5 minutes of pure fiction, delivered flawlessly. When Brianna finished, she got a standing ovation from the front table. My mother was crying, the graceful, single-tear kind she'd perfected at church. Then a great-aunt at my table leaned over and patted my arm. "And what do you do, dear?" Before I could answer, my mother's voice cut across the lawn. "Cassidy works in accounting," Jolene said. "Somewhere." Scattered laughter. Brianna smiled into her wineglass. I felt my face burn, but I kept my hands flat on the table. Not yet. The sun was sinking behind the magnolias when my father stood up. Glenn Thornton was not a natural speaker. He was a quiet man who'd spent his life driving trucks, watching ESPN, and agreeing with whatever Jolene told him was true. But tonight, Jolene had given him a script, and he read from a folded piece of paper she'd tucked into his shirt pocket before dinner. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he started. His voice was thin through the mic. This family means everything to us." He paused, looked at Brianna, who sat at the front table next to Grandma Edith. "Jolene and I," he swallowed. "We only have one daughter we're truly proud of." The lawn went still. "Brianna, you are our greatest achievement. Everything you've done, your career, your heart, the way you take care of this family, we couldn't have asked for a better daughter." Applause, not thunderous. There was an awkward undercurrent, a few people glancing around, a cousin shifting in her chair. But enough people clapped to make it feel sanctioned. Nobody looked at me. Nobody needed to. I sat at the back table, 68 people in front of me, my father's words still hanging in the summer air like smoke. "We only have one daughter we're truly proud of." He hadn't misspoken. He hadn't been ambiguous. He had said, in front of every aunt, uncle, cousin, and grandparent in our family, that I didn't count. My grandmother Edith turned slowly in her chair, found me, saw the redness in my eyes. Her brow creased with something I hadn't seen from her in years, alarm. I placed my hand on my clutch, felt the hard edge of my phone through the fabric. 22 years. I stood up. I didn't rush. I didn't storm. I rose from my chair the way you rise when you finally made a decision you've been turning over for weeks. Slowly. Deliberately. Like gravity had changed direction, and standing up was the only thing left that made sense. Heads turned. A few cousins whispered. My mother noticed first. Cassidy, Jolene's voice was sharp and low. Sit down. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I walked between the two banquet tables. 68 faces tracked me like I was crossing a stage. The string lights had come on. The air smelled like peach cobbler and fresh-cut grass, and my heartbeat was so loud I could feel it in my fingertips. Brianna watched me from the front table, her wine glass frozen halfway to her mouth. Confusion first, then suspicion, then something I'd never seen on my sister's face before, a flicker of fear. I reached the tech table. Aunt Ruth stood beside the projector, arms at her sides. She didn't ask a question. She didn't need to. She picked up the HDMI adapter and held it out to me. I pulled my phone from my clutch, plugged it in. The projector screen lit up behind me, a white glow replacing the frozen family slideshow. My father stepped forward. Cassidy, this is not the time. Actually, Dad. I looked at him, steady. This is exactly the time. I opened the audio file, 14 minutes and 22 seconds. The timestamp on the screen was visible to everyone. My thumb pressed play. And then Brianna's voice, loud, clear, unmistakable, poured out of the outdoor speakers and across the lawn where 68 members of our family sat in the cooling Georgia evening. I didn't finish nursing school, big deal. Brianna's real face went white as her recorded voice filled the air. The first thing I noticed was the silence, not the polite kind that settles over a room during a speech. This was something heavier, the silence of 68 people realizing all at once that something they hadn't expected was about to change everything they thought they knew. Brianna's recorded voice rolled out from the speakers like a confession played in a courtroom. I didn't finish nursing school, big deal. It wasn't for me. Mom and Dad's tuition money? They owed me that for all the years I had to be the perfect one. Someone at the second table set their glass down. The tiny clink of crystal on wood sounded like a gunshot in the quiet. My mother launched out of her chair. She moved toward the projector with both hands raised, eyes wild. Turn it off, Cassidy, turn it off right now! She was 3 steps away when my grandmother's voice cut through the air like a blade. Jolene! My mother froze. Grandma Edith hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. 79 years of quiet authority did the work for her. She gripped the arm of her chair and looked at her daughter with an expression I'd never seen on her face. Not anger exactly, but a devastation that preceded it. Sit down. Edith's voice trembled, but every word was iron. I want to hear every word. My mother sat, like a child who'd been caught standing on the table. Brianna was on her feet now, hands shaking, the red dress suddenly too bright against her ashen face. That's taken out of context. She set me up. But the recording didn't care about context. The recording just kept going. Brianna's own voice, cheerful and careless and 3 glasses deep, filling the summer air with truths she never meant to share. By minute 4, the recording had reached the money. Dad's retirement account? Brianna's voice was almost gleeful on the playback. I've taken about 40 grand over the last 4 years, small amounts. They'll never figure it out. They think the market crashed. Recorded Brianna laughed. The real Brianna didn't. My father, still standing near the mic at the front, lowered himself into the nearest chair like his legs had stopped working. The color drained from his face in real time. I watched a man who had stood in front of his family and erased one daughter to praise another, suddenly realize that the daughter he'd praised had been robbing him. That's our retirement, Glenn whispered. But the mic was still on, and everyone heard it. Jolene turned to Brianna. Tell me that's not true. Her voice cracked down the middle. Tell me, Brianna. Mom, I can explain. It wasn't like that. I was going to pay it back. The recording cut her off. Brianna's own voice again, bright and unbothered. Mom believes everything I say. All I have to do is cry and she takes my side. My mother's hand went to her mouth. A sound came out of her. Not quite a cry, not quite a gasp, something between the two that I think only happens when you hear your own manipulation described to you by the person who weaponized it. Around the tables, the reactions rippled outward. Uncle Frank crossed his arms and shook his head slowly. A cousin's wife leaned over and whispered something urgent to her husband. Two of the older aunts exchanged a look that carried 30 years of suspicion finally confirmed. And Grandma Edith sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, listening to every word with the careful attention of someone assembling a verdict. Then came minute 6. And the necklace. "You know what I told Mom when you were 14? That you stole Grandma's necklace?" Recorded Brianna's voice was warm with wine and self-satisfaction. "I took it. I needed you out of the picture for Thanksgiving, and it worked." The sound that came from my grandmother was small, but it stopped everything. Edith pressed her hand flat against the table. Her fingers were shaking. She turned and looked at me, not with pity, but with a horror that told me she was reliving that Thanksgiving. The 14-year-old girl on her knees, apologizing for a crime she hadn't committed. The granddaughter she'd watched be humiliated while the real thief stood beside her, dry-eyed and smiling. "Oh, sweetheart," Edith whispered. I don't think anyone else heard her, but I did. The recording rolled on. Minute 7. "Why do you think I've been visiting Grandma? She's rewriting her will. I'll make sure my name is the only one that matters." Edith's grip on the table tightened until her knuckles went bone white. "And you?" Recorded Brianna leaned into the mic like she was sharing a secret. "You'll get nothing, just like always, because in this family, I'm the daughter. You're the bill." That was the moment Brianna ran. She shoved her chair back with a screech that tore through the quiet. She grabbed her purse, kicked off one heel, and half ran, half stumbled across the lawn toward the garden gate, her red dress catching the string lights. But the estate was 3 acres. The gate was far, and 68 people watched her every step. Cousin Marcus, 24, built like a linebacker, arms folded, was standing by the garden path. He didn't grab her. He didn't speak. He just stood there. And Brianna stopped. Behind her, Grandma Edith rose from her chair. My grandmother walked to the front of the gathering, the way women of her generation do when they've reached the limit of what they'll tolerate. Slowly, straight-backed, with a dignity that makes silence feel mandatory. Someone handed her the wireless mic. She held it with both hands. "I have spent 79 years building this family," Edith said. Her voice shook, but it carried. "And today I learned that the person I trusted most in it has been lying to all of us." She turned to me. "Cassidy." I couldn't breathe. "I owe you an apology." Her eyes glistened. "I watched them push you to the side for years. I told myself it would get better. I told myself your mother would come around. I should have spoken sooner. I should have fought harder for you, and I am deeply, deeply sorry." I pressed my lips together. I would not cry in front of 68 people. I would not. Edith turned back to the crowd. "I will be meeting with my attorney on Monday morning. My will, as it currently stands, will be rewritten." She paused, letting that land. "I want every person here to know why." The lawn was so quiet, I could hear the cicadas in the magnolias. "Not because of money," Edith continued, "because trust, once broken, has to be earned back." She looked at Jolene, who sat motionless in her chair, mascara streaked, then at Glenn, who stared at his hands. "And some of you have a lot of earning to do." At the edge of the garden, Brianna stood frozen, one shoe on, clutch pressed against her chest, tears running down her face. I stood beside the projector, phone still connected, recording ended. I hadn't said a single word since pressing play. I didn't need to. The truth had said everything for me. I want to stop here for a moment, because this part still sits heavy with me. Do you think my grandmother did the right thing? Or was it too much, announcing it like that, in front of everyone? Drop justice in the comments if you think she was right. Drop too far if you think the will conversation should have stayed private. I genuinely want to know what you think, and if you haven't subscribed yet, we're not done. There's still fallout I need to tell you about. Let me keep going. The reunion didn't end, it fractured. After Grandma Edith's announcement, the gathering split like a cell dividing. Nobody left. This was too seismic to walk away from. But the lawn rearranged itself into clusters, each one processing a different piece of what had just happened. The older relatives, Uncle Frank, Aunt Lois, the great aunts who remembered Edith's late husband, gathered around my grandmother like a protective ring. Frank put his hand on Edith's shoulder and said, low but audible, "We're behind you, Edith, whatever you need." A group of younger cousins drifted toward me, not accusing, not celebrating, just present. My cousin Danielle, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, touched my elbow. "How long have you known?" she asked. No judgment, just wanting to understand. And Brianna came back. She walked across the lawn with mascara streaked to her jawline and her voice pitched in that exact register she'd used her whole life to escape consequences. "That recording was manipulated," she said to anyone who would listen. "She set me up. She got me drunk. This is entrapment." Most people looked away. A few shook their heads. Then Aunt Ruth spoke. She'd been standing quietly by the projector table the entire time, arms folded, watching. Now she stepped forward. "Brianna," Ruth said, calm as a lake, "I've had my doubts about you for 3 years. I told your mother, and she cut me out of the family for it." She looked around the lawn. The recording just confirmed what I already knew. Jolene, silent until now, turned on me. Her voice was raw. "How could you do this to your family, Cassidy?" I looked at my mother. 22 years of swallowed words sat in my throat. "I didn't do this, Mom. Brianna did. I just stopped hiding it." I found a quiet spot at the edge of the garden, near the stone bench where Grandma used to read to me when I was small enough to sit in her lap. The party noise was behind me. Fragments of urgent conversations, someone's child asking why Aunt Brianna was crying, the clink of dishes being cleared by people who needed something to do with their hands. My father found me there. Glenn stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets looking at the ground. His eyes were swollen. He didn't look like a man who'd just given a speech. He looked like a man who'd just had one given to him. "Did I really say that?" His voice was hoarse. "That we only have one daughter? You said it in front of 68 people, Dad." He winced like I'd touched a burn. "Your mother, she wrote those words. She put the paper in my pocket and told me what to say. And you chose to read them." He didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He just stood there, absorbing it, the way a wall absorbs a hit. "I'm sorry, Cassidy." His voice broke on my name. "I don't know how to fix this." I looked at him for a long time. This man who'd driven trucks for 30 years, who never spoke up at dinner, who let his wife and eldest daughter write the rules while his youngest daughter paid the price. He wasn't a monster. He was something almost worse, a bystander who loved me quietly and never once let that love be loud enough to matter. "I'm not asking you to fix it right now, Dad." I said it gently, not because he'd earned gentleness, but because cruelty had never been my language. "I'm asking you to stop pretending I don't exist." He cried. I'd never seen my father cry in 28 years. There was no hug, no resolution. Just 2 people standing in a garden, learning how to start from the wreckage. I was sitting on the porch steps when Grandma Edith came and lowered herself down beside me. She moved carefully. Her hip had been bothering her for months. But she refused my hand and sat on her own terms. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The evening had turned blue-dark. Fireflies blinked over the back lawn where, an hour ago, everything had changed. "You held on to that recording," Edith said. Not a question. "You could have used it to hurt her weeks ago, but you waited." "I almost didn't play it, Grandma. I almost walked out." "But you didn't." She reached over and took my hand. Her skin was thin and cool, but her grip was firm. "And I'm grateful, because I almost gave everything I have to a liar." I shook my head. "I don't need anything from your will, Grandma. That's not why I—" "Hush." She squeezed my hand. "This isn't about what you need. It's about what you deserve, and about what's right." She looked out at the garden where the string lights swayed in the evening breeze. The guests were beginning to leave. Slow, quiet goodbyes instead of the usual boisterous Callaway farewell. "I'm meeting my lawyer Monday," she said. "Brianna's portion will go into a trust. She can access it when she pays back every cent she stole from your parents and gets honest about her life. Not before." Then she told me something that knocked the breath out of me. "I put your name in my will 30 years ago, Cassidy. When you were born. Your mother asked me to remove it when you were 6. She paused. I refused, but I stopped talking about it, to keep the peace. She looked at me with wet eyes. I should never have kept quiet. Quiet is how this family got here. 1 week after the reunion, the fallout wasn't slowing down. It was compounding. Brianna tried the social media route first. She posted on Facebook. My own sister stabbed me in the back at our family reunion. I've never felt so betrayed. The post got 11 likes, all from friends who hadn't been there. Then cousin Marcus commented, "We all heard the recording, Brianna. You stabbed yourself." 27 people liked his reply. Brianna deleted the post within the hour. The family group chat went through a seismic shift. Brianna was removed, not by one person but by a quiet consensus. Danielle simply created a new chat and didn't add her. Nobody objected. My father called me on a Tuesday evening. It was the first time in my life he'd dialed my number without Jolene prompting him. "I pulled up the retirement account statements," he said. His voice sounded 10 years older. "She took more than we thought. $42,300. Cass, it's all documented. The transfers, the dates, everything." I closed my eyes. "What are you going to do?" "Your mother and I are meeting with a financial advisor this week, and maybe a lawyer." He paused. "I should have listened to you when you called." "Yeah, Dad, you should have." There was something else, too. The nursing career, the one Brianna had performed so beautifully at the reunion, the one she'd used to impress Grandma and charm the family. It fully unraveled. A cousin who worked in healthcare asked around. Brianna wasn't a nurse. She wasn't even a certified nursing assistant. She was a receptionist at a chiropractic clinic 30 miles from her apartment. She answered phones and scheduled appointments. She'd been doing it for 6 years. Every story she'd told, every patient she'd saved, fiction, every word. 2 weeks after the reunion, my mother called. I almost didn't pick up. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, vibrating with her name, and I watched it ring twice before I answered. "Cassidy?" Her voice was small, smaller than I'd ever heard it, deflated, like someone had let the air out of the woman who'd controlled our family's narrative for 25 years. "I didn't know about the money," she said. "Or the necklace. I swear to you I didn't know." "I believe you didn't know about those things, Mom." I kept my voice level. "But you knew how you treated me. You didn't need a recording to know that." Silence. The kind that stretches until it becomes its own answer. "I was so scared when you were born." Her voice cracked. "The doctors told us you might not survive the first night. And then you did, and the bills came, and your father and I were drowning. She stopped. Started again. "I think I blamed you for something that wasn't your fault, and once I started, I couldn't figure out how to stop." I gripped the phone. Part of me, the 14-year-old girl still kneeling on that living room floor, wanted to hang up. Another part of me, the part that had spent 22 years calling every Sunday, held on. "Can you forgive me?" she whispered. "I'm not ready for that yet, Mom." I said it without cruelty, without edge, just honest. "But I'm not closing the door." A long, shuddering breath on her end. "If you want a relationship with me," I continued, "it starts with honesty. No more choosing sides. No more erasing me from the family. No more letting Brianna write the story." She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just said, "Okay." It wasn't resolution, but it was the first honest word she'd said to me in 22 years. 3 weeks have passed since the reunion. That brings us to now. To today, as I'm telling you this story. Grandma Edith met with her attorney the Monday after the reunion, just as she promised. The new will divides her estate fairly among her children and grandchildren, but Brianna's portion is held in a conditional trust. The terms are straightforward. Brianna must repay every dollar she took from our parents' retirement account and provide verified proof of employment and education before the trust releases. No loopholes, no shortcuts, just accountability. My father and his financial advisor combed through 4 years of statements. The total wasn't $40,000. It was $47,200. Brianna had been skimming right up until 2 months before the reunion. Glenn and Jolene are consulting a lawyer about their options. They haven't filed anything yet. I think part of them is still in shock. Brianna hasn't spoken to anyone in the family. Her apartment in Augusta is empty. A cousin drove by to check. The word through the family grapevine is that she moved to Nashville to live with her boyfriend. She hasn't returned a single call. As for Aunt Ruth, Grandma Edith invited her back into the family circle the day after the reunion. 3 years of silence, broken by a single phone call. Ruth told me later that Edith said, "I should have listened to you. I should have listened to both of you." Last week, I received an email from my grandmother. No formal language, no legal talk, just one line. "Come visit me anytime, sweetheart. The guest room is yours." It always was. I read that email 4 times. And unlike my mother's journal entry from 22 years ago, the one that said she wished she'd stopped at 1, these words didn't make me wish they'd change. They were exactly right. It's a Thursday evening. I'm sitting in my apartment, the same kitchen where Brianna drank 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio and dismantled 22 years of her own lies. The wine stain on the table is still there. I haven't cleaned it. I'm not sure why. People keep asking me if I feel guilty, if I regret playing the recording, if I wish I'd handled it differently. Here's my honest answer. I didn't play that recording to destroy my sister. I played it because for 22 years, my family had been telling a story about me that wasn't true, and I was the only person who could change the narrative. Not with anger, not with speeches, just with the truth, played out loud in a space where it couldn't be whispered away. Do I wish it hadn't come to that? Every single day. But I know what would have happened if I'd stayed silent. My grandmother would have left her legacy to a liar. My parents would have lost more money they couldn't afford, and I would have spent the rest of my life sitting at the end of the table, hoping someone would notice I was there. I'm done hoping, not in a bitter way, in a free way. I still love my parents. I still love my sister. That's the part people don't understand about setting boundaries. It's not about stopping love. It's about stopping the part where love gets used as a leash. My phone buzzes, a text from my dad. "Thinking of you today." 3 words. No apology, no grand gesture. Just acknowledgement that I exist. That I'm his daughter too. It's not perfect. It's not the family I wished for when I was 10 years old, pressing a writing contest certificate against my chest in an empty auditorium. But it's real. And real is enough for now. Last Saturday, I drove to Grandma Edith's estate. The reunion tables were gone. The projector was packed away. The string lights still hung between the magnolias, but they were off now. Just thin, dark wires against the Georgia sky. Grandma was waiting on the porch in her rocking chair, a pitcher of sweet tea sweating on the side table. She waved when she saw my car turn into the driveway, and something about that wave, small, eager, like a kid spotting a friend at school, made my chest ache in the best possible way. I sat beside her. We didn't talk about Brianna. We didn't talk about the recording, or the will, or my mother's phone call. We talked about her garden. The hydrangeas were blooming late this year. We talked about my job. I'd been offered a small raise, and she clapped her hands like I'd won an Oscar. We talked about my cat, Penny, who had learned to open the kitchen cabinet and steal treats. Grandma laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that crinkled her whole face and made her reach for my arm to steady herself. "Tell me about your life, sweetheart," she said eventually. "The real version, not the one your mother edited." So I did. I told her about my apartment, my morning runs, the book club I'd joined, the friend who taught me to make sourdough. Small things, true things. "You sound happy," she said. "I'm getting there, Grandma." We sat on that porch until the fireflies came out. No drama, no audience, no performance, just a grandmother and her granddaughter catching up on 22 years of conversations they should have had a long time ago. I spent 22 years being their burden, but it turns out the heaviest thing I ever carried wasn't their disappointment. It was my own silence, and I finally put it down. Before I go, here are a few things this whole experience taught me. 1. Silence doesn't keep the peace. It just lets the loudest voice in the room write the story. 2. Protecting someone from the truth isn't love. It's control wearing a nicer outfit. And 3. You don't need anyone's permission to stop being invisible. If any of this hit close to home, if you've ever been the family scapegoat, the overlooked one, the person who kept showing up even when no one saved you a seat, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one, and if you want more stories like this, I've linked a few of my favorites in the description below. Hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. It means more than you know.